So I'm pretending I don't know that it's on. Of course, there's always a chance I'm not pretending. But then there's always a chance that it's not on. I wanted to pick up a bit more where we were last time regarding the following. That no study of a universe from within its own dimensional confines can ever extend beyond the quasar-riddled edges of its own reality. That in conjunction with, if you recall, right where we ended, from there into, no matter how you may try to think about, to study yourself from any recognizable position within your own intellectual universe, then any first causes, big bangs, any notions of seminal events will remain forever part of your dark matter. Yeah. In this case, no offense to astrophysics, but in the internal universe by dark matter, would you care to specifically consider that this could be undiscovered, perhaps even undiscoverable activities, and yet some that even the polarized ordinary mind suspects must exist? That is not, by the way, anyone who makes any casual perusal of the scientific world, that is not, now that I said it, too far removed from what they theorize about dark matter, which is not the point, but those of you that know that mathematically at least, at the very least, I guess, mathematical models tend to show to scientists that there's a lot not seen that must be there in the universe, and that's what they've been referring to as the dark matter, that in some way is outside the spectrum that we can now perceive in one way or the other. And it has a kind of, as always, corollary internally, that I was saying that there is a kind of dark matter on the basis that no matter historically, psychologically, individually, that no matter how from the ordinary internal positions, any recognizable position in your intellectual universe, no matter how you attempt to study yourself, you're left to the same situation of attempting to find, to move to the complete picture of a universe, if we're talking about out there, while studying it within the confines of its own dimensions. You can never get past its own edge. That's why I threw in, if you recall, what the term quasar riddle, because they, unless things have changed, quasars were considered about the furthest object they could see, and X years ago they saw quasars at such and such distance, at such and such areas, and that would seem to be right on the verge of surely the Big Bang, the verge of perceivable reality, the verge of actual creation. But then they got better telescopes, they got better, somebody put some astrophysicists finally got some glasses. Then they saw a quasar even further. And so, you understand, it's a matter of, hey, our knowledge is expanding. We now see quasars further out. That is, right at the edge, right at the verge of the edge of the universe, we now see further than we did 10 years ago. But, of course, they're not supposed to, but, nobody notices, wait a minute, we've been going through this crap for 6,000 years. Just a little bit further, just a little bit further. We just get outside of town, we keep moving the city limits out, and we're getting more and more sophisticated and developing all this unused territory out there. Ringing the zoning commissions, beginning to make some use of this rather crudely utilized farmland. You do understand what I'm talking about, farmland and the urbanization of life up there. That they keep expanding, and they would say, we have moved out our knowledge of the universe. It has gone out further and further, and nobody notices that there does not seem to be an end to it, because they cannot. Not because of the universe, but because of just what I said, the instruments they're using to study it, the human intellect, is based upon the same schematic, it is based upon the same model, and the mind itself can keep saying, well, I not only have studied intently my own self, but I have even taken advantage of those who went before me. You remember those? That's the ones that sometimes you can hear them holler, "We went ahead before you." You remember that? That I've even taken advantage of all of the work. Socrates, everyone else did. And therefore I am pushing the frontiers of the human mind. I know more about myself, no offense to them, but I'm sure that by now I know more about myself than Socrates did about himself. But again, no one notices, well, be that as it may, or may that as it be, from a quite valid perspective, all you have done is develop additional, heretofore unused, underused suburban area, but now you've turned it into the city, and by saying, well, I know more about me than I did, it really has no operational impact. Because if someone, and they would be within their rights to say it, that I surely, no offense to the great man of the past, but I surely know more about me than Socrates did about himself. If that be true, I must say, I hate to keep going back to scientific jargon, but so what? With an ordinary person, they can't deal with that. They just take it as being sarcastic, but it truly is so what? Because if you're living in the middle of a city, if Socrates lived in the middle of Athens, and Athens, the incorporated area, at the time of Socrates, let us say that it covered a square hectares, acres, millimeters, centimeters of, let's say that the urbanized, the incorporated area of Athens covered, let's say, 10 square miles. But now let's say that Athens now covers 100 square miles. Then you can say, well, Socrates, internally, his knowledge of himself covered 10 square millimeters, micromillimeters, anything. And you could say, let's say that there would be some validity, that a person now could say, well, my knowledge of myself in here now covers 100 square euromillimeters. What if that be true? So what? Athens is now Athens. If you attempted to go into Athens and say, what do you know about yourself now? The most it could say would be based upon behavior. That is, it could say, if it had a memory, a kind of genetic memory, which it does have and doesn't know it, the same way as you have, or people have and do not know it, the best it could say was, all right, I know this about me. I'm 10 times as large as I was 3,500 years ago. But to say, would you understand any more than nature how cities come about? Do you understand, do you have any knowledge of the transcendental nature of urban areas? And Athens would go, if it could do this and be truthful, forthright, it would go, no. But I know I'm bigger. So on that basis, you could say, all right, Athens of today knows more about itself than Athens did 3,500 years ago. Because Athens of 3,500 years ago, the best it knew about itself was, yes, well, I'm 10 square miles. Now we're talking progress. 10 times as much progress. So if you said, I know much more about myself, to study myself, than someone of Socrates' era did. Because I have now my brain, my knowledge of me now incorporates 100 times the area that his did. What if that's true? Back to that, I don't know whether we should put it in mathematics or physics, but back to the theorem of so what? It's nothing. Because if the study is carried on from within the confines, within the dimensional confines of whether it be a universe out there or whether it be a universe in here, finding the spark of creation, finding just a real seminal event is a dream. I just made that word up. It's D-R-E-A-M, if you write it down. It's not that it's not real. It's just that it's... So what do you know about yourself now? I know that I am 10 times the man that I was. I know that I'm 100 times the man that Aristotle was. That's the kind of progress we're making. We can now see quasars somewhere in the vicinity of 2,000 light years further out than we could just 5 years ago. Take your breath away. All of this was an intro, I guess, because now I was going to get down to, that was the kind of catch you up to the wrap-up, which I was going to point out. That it becomes thus that all religious, psychological, social, historical explanations of man and life are not simply wrong, merely moot. Because in that, all energy within a system will ultimately refer back to itself. It's just a period. I can drag it out and do a few more steps, and postscript it, but that's it. Within any system, the energy, talking about the energy of trying to pick up the light waves coming from the most distant quasars, to an ordinary mind trying to run the perimeter of its own knowledge about itself, everything it's read, all the theories about itself, to try and think about the nature of life from any ordinary, any recognizable position, any Mount Palomar in here, one that's known. I don't care how big the telescope is, I don't care how revered be the location. All of the energy within a system will ultimately refer back to itself. There's no way out. May I repeat that? There's no way out. Thus you have that all ordinary knowledge is circular. So much for the wrap-up. We need a clock running on, at least in the, what would it be this? Some corner of the special field of relativity. Well, now we're up to speed, see? And so now, since the tape's halfway through, now we can commence getting behind anew. But have no fear, see, because if you're lucky, you'll die. I mean, assuming you're taking this serious, and well, that's true, we keep getting behind according to him. But always remember, always look on the bright side, be cheery. You could die. Well, all right, one more aspect before we actually. In that all energy, ultimately within a closed system, within a system, we don't really have to say closed anymore. I used to do that to sort of trick some of you people to, so that you would think that we're not that far removed from Omni or Science Digest. The ordinary world. But within a system, all of the energy will ultimately refer back to itself. Thus is what makes any attempted, and I just picked out social, historical, hysterical, religious, psychological, take any you want, that all explanations, none of them are wrong. There's no conflict between a religious explanation about, of course, when we say explanation, you understand it's facts that they don't know. It's theories. That there is no real conflict between any religious description of the nature of man, where man came from, what's the purpose, or any psychological. Although in the city I know that they are almost down to the point of barroom fights. But there is no conflict because none of them are operational to anyone who wants to understand. And so you're not dealing with, well, wait a minute, this one's wrong or that one's wrong. None of them are wrong. That's not the point. You're not even close. They're not wrong. They're simply moot. In that, whatever the energy is, whether it's run through the guise, the institutional guise, the name of religion, or anything else, military history, economic theories, no matter what it's run through, the energy within a system will ultimately refer back to itself. And of course, ordinary intelligence operating at the same basis never notices it. In other words, it doesn't stop ordinary people from thinking, does it? I mean, just because they can't think of anything that gets anywhere, does that stop them? No. You know that. You haven't forgotten that good old Kyroot already. The guy pointed out that in the city, that is in secondary affairs, just because you don't know what you're doing doesn't mean you have to stop what you're doing. Don't make me pick on some of the professions and point out all the people that be out of work. Well, everybody, of course. It's not the basis that they are wrong. It's just for someone attempting to try and move past the edges, the dimensional edges of a locked-in universe, to get past the quasars, to get past wherever the city limits are institutionally for a large number of people. That is ordinary knowledge. For an individual to go past it, You got to understand and just bypass. Stop all that. None of them are wrong. They're just inoperative. They don't reveal anything, but notice that didn't stop anybody. It can't. The energy will eventually, within a system, refer back to itself, which is one reason that you can always make, or some people can, not everyone, of course, because we got to have diverse professions. But always a few people can make a living being a smartass, being a critic. Because all you've got to do, just for a second you can get people, that's part of what comedians do at the ordinary level, is what I was saying, that don't lose your place, all right? I wasn't talking to you. That energy will eventually refer back to itself. And I said that, it doesn't stop anybody, but in a way people do know that what they think is inconclusive is why ordinary jokes make people laugh. Why a smartass can get a job. Why you can be sarcastic and pass for being intelligent under certain conditions, because all of those kind of ordinary jokes, all forms of sarcasm, social criticism, cynicism, all of that falls within what I'm saying, that you point out in some way that people don't know what they're doing, and in the right context, especially a few belts. Remember, life's got a story for everything. And where else are you going to look? It's not funny, it's not sarcastic. A classic example, I guess, in all areas, all histories is religion. I guess it's the easiest one to point out, is somebody don't know what they're doing, their baby just died, they feel like they're going to die, the crops just fell apart, and they fall down their knees, or they climb up in a tree, or whatever the ritual is in their place, and they holler at, dear gods, whatever the supplication is, but what they're saying is, nobody knows what's going on. But from not a sarcastic, this would be what ordinary smartass is, the role they play, but I'm asking you to see, you should see by now. Not somebody else, even you. That is not operational. It has no basis in operational reality. In other words, by saying, oh dear God, what's happened? Can you help me? First, get my corn to grow. And then maybe as an afterthought, tell me why you did that in the first place. No. The gods never tell anybody. Or those that they tell, we lock up. Rightfully so. But the gods never tell anybody. But does that stop anybody? The whole world, more or less, is religious, even those that won't admit it. They're religious just because of the way things are wired up. It is not a cultural phenomenon. It is a phenomenon of dumbness. Not an attack on religion, as you know. That is, it's an area beyond the quasars. And so if you don't know if you don't know something, instead of just being mathematical, which most people are not, instead of putting an X there, you fill in God, Allah, something, great cosmic forces. But what I was trying to get you to see is everyone, in a sense, just because of the way the chemical and electrical system is wired up in man, in one sense, for no operational purpose, and cannot be sustained over any period of time, that in a sense all sane people know that all of their thought is moot. Well, on any grand scale, thought's all right to add 2 and 2 or to be able to read how much you owe on the gas pump and such as that. But anything about, well, wait a minute, I'm beginning to have some concept about what I am, why I'm the way I am, why I keep getting attracted to this kind of women, why there are even women like this in the world. Everybody knows that's not true at one level. It's why everything in the secondary world is open to a joke. And the more aggressive, the more hostile, the more sarcastic the humor, the more people you'll get to laugh. Because all you're doing, in a sense, is rubbing it in about nobody knows what the hell's going on, not up here. And people will laugh if they're in the mood to have it rubbed in. They call it, well, I'm in the mood to have a laugh and go out. They're in the mood to have it rubbed in. They're in the mood to have somebody grab a dagger, but it's not down in the act base. It's up here in the fact base. And you go in, you pay the big cover charge, and you order the $3 drinks. And you pay somebody, in a sense, to verbally reach out there wherever your little dagger is or where the sore is and go, ah, and you laugh. But part of the rubbing it in is that you're pointing out the comedian without knowing it, or he wouldn't be up there. See? But what he's doing is pointing out nobody knows what's going on. There's no such thing as conclusive thought. You can take we've been through several ways to analyze it, but you can take the punchline of every ordinary joke and look at it. It is sometimes, in fact, I guess as close as ordinary thinking about humor comes, as they point out that real jokes have to be surprising or based upon some form of surprise. And what it is simply this: if you look at it, the punchline of all ordinary jokes is pointing out that no matter what you try to think about this, if the joke's based on sex, marriage, jobs, arts, whatever it is, you're pointing out that no matter what people think, and if you went along with the setup, then you were sort of ordinary, sort of mainstream, and you're going, yeah. And the setup is like, well, here's somebody thinking, and then the punchline is, and then it turned out it didn't do me good to think, did it? And you laugh. I'm sure, as Merle Haggard might say, to keep from crying. But Merle's been talking like that since he started hanging around that Zen cult, so I don't know. I'm not responsible. Man ought to pull himself together. Well, what I started to say to end the intro, Jesus Christ. Back to the intro, so we can get started for the night. After all of that, I was going to point out, you recall, I was pointing out that nothing is wrong. No ordinary explanations. They're simply inoperative, moot, in the true sense of the word, to somebody attempting to see beyond the city limits, beyond the quasar-riddled edges. Once the energy, as it will, turns back and refers to itself, then you're left with this, insofar as the explanations, insofar as being able to see at the ordinary view, not just in you, but look at what history reveals and what people say they see and think. That based upon the unrecognized fact that all energy within a system will ultimately will refer back to itself. Then within the intellectual universe now, what you have is that all remains either confused or as it is. If you want it more personally, that all in an intellectual universe, that all, and now all, you consider being either impersonal pronoun or consider it to be representative of the human element, and say that within the intellectual universe, all remains either confused or as they are, which is the same thing as all remains either confused or as it is. That is, you're trying to look upon the non-mortal universe. That on that basis, insofar as the human intellect seems to build, drive, support, create a world out here, our immediate world, not the universe, but the man-made world as they call it. On that basis, due to the unrecognized fact that energy within a system must ultimately refer to itself, then if you want to, at what appears to be directed out there, is things either remain confused in a broad sense, or they remain as they are. Any of you who don't have anything better to do might ponder, why did I turn that into two different things? But back to the more personal version, I just wanted you to see, to put it another way, now if we're apparently talking about strictly people inside the privacy of their own little, then you could say, based upon still that all energy within a system will ultimately refer back to itself. Not to make it personal. Thus, all things remain either confused or as they are. That is, the people. What else are you going to do? No matter how you send the energy out, no matter how you try and capture the light waves in a telescope, which to keep the parable going, consider that you're sending out the reception. Some of you, I guess, really going to have a lot to do to work on that one. Instead of trying to capture, see the light coming in, you have to look at a telescope as being an active. You don't have to. I don't like to be blamed for migraines. But then if you look at the universe now instead of the world out there in here, and the unrecognized fact that energy in any system will ultimately refer back to itself, then in here, now just speaking about strictly human, psychological, blah, blah terms, then on that basis, in this universe, everything will either remain confused or people, will remain as they are. Is that a choice? Is that a choice? Huh? You don't have to go to a Chinese restaurant. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Word to the... Now can we start for tonight? Gee, sure, we got nearly 7 minutes left. Finding change. I want to make reference to several of the Kyroots. Finding change to be so necessary and so pleasurable, several realities allowed their creatures. Just think about it. Would you consider yet another possible polarized impossibility? And that is that a larger, a greater system, exposing some of its singular activities and attributes to the awareness of its lesser internal parts, which is what the Kyroots said. Consider that. A larger, and you cannot leave it, you can start there of course, on just spatial dimensions, larger, greater system, the universe itself, the universe of your intellect insofar as it has any knowledge, insofar as it is operative within the potential universe here. Consider that it can see the way things are arranged in some realities, is the way the Kyroot went. And let's just laughingly assume that we might be in the midst of one of the several. If not, how in the world did even the sentence make sense? It's migraine time again. If you would like to do that to the tune of that great Buck Owens song. Well, it's migraine time again. I didn't know I was going to have to expand everyone's own country music education. Consider within a system, just consider a system larger than you can be aware of in any spatial sense. Consider this system in some way being able to expose to its lesser parts some of its singular. And when I say singular, that is activities in which and attributes, activities in which it may be involved, and attributes, characteristics it may apparently have. When I say singular, that is that the lesser parts cannot directly experience. And yet makes, in some way, reveals, allows them to have some awareness of it going on. Are you going to tell me that either no one hears that or that no one finds that mildly interesting? Well, okay, do we have the choir and the organist? If you would join me now in sending up yet another rendition of our admiration to life's staggering efficiency, which, for those of you that's the name of the song, the name of the hymn on page 39. We just ponder it, of things being arranged in some realities so that parts of the system that cannot function in a certain way can yet be made aware of the operations and think about them. You don't get any greater interest in the possibility of, I know that oftentimes we throw around the term efficiency and we trying to pay homage. Efficiency is not even close. But I'm even going to give myself a headache trying to think of a better word, a three-dimensional word. Of course, the reason I'm not, because I know there is not one. To bypass, to go beyond efficiency. I mean, this efficiency makes ordinary efficiency. I mean, the relationship is like the difference between Olivier's Hamlet and divorce court. the acting. Consider. Well, this is not the end. Don't if you still don't think that you have it. Wait just a second. But just consider the setup I'm trying to give you. I let the Kyroots start it because that almost makes sense. And I think that some of you, symbolically, got some glimpse to say that finding change so necessary and so pleasurable, several realities allowed their creatures, men in this case, to think about it. Now, even when that was read earlier tonight, a lot of people, snorted, because that almost says something. If an ordinary person even tried to follow in this verbally, they might take it as being some sort of smart-ass comment that, well, you're just saying that people can dream and imagine stuff that life won't let them do. Such as me. I got more talent in my little finger than Brahms ever had in his body, even when he lived down by the wharf. But does life let me get anywhere? No. That sort of thing. And it's not. It's not some individual. It's not some torturous quasi-revelation that life allows. It is widespread. It would be part of the definitive description of a sane person in the ordinary sense, is that they can think about the necessity, the pleasure of change, and of course the tacit part of the Kyroot of change, or at least a type of change, let us say for a second, that is beyond them. But let me do it one more time. Finding change to be so necessary, so pleasurable, several realities allowed their creatures to think about it. And then I ask you, even admitting that efficiency is not even close, but to consider the kind of efficiency of a system, a reality, of a system having singular activities, attributes, singular, not unique in some phony baloney TV commentator sense today, but singular. And in some way allowing the lesser parts that cannot directly participate to be aware of it. Like life being able to lift up its dress, and little creatures pre-puberty that don't even understand sex still get aroused. How about that? That wasn't good. All right. Life pulls up its dress to its little creatures and even makes the blind ones get horny. Am I getting better? It is beyond any ordinary conception, even with a brass band behind it, of efficiency. It's way beyond efficient. Comma. And I was now going to ask, would you ponder it in this manner, assuming that you followed some of that, to peek internally at your own neural cosmos and see that within your own individual system that the same arrangement is in place. Is it not? Yes, it are. You dream of that which you cannot do, is a simple way to put it. But I tried to absorb some of the potential initial body blows by backing up and saying that that's what an ordinary person could have thought when they first heard it. They're saying, well, you're just saying that some people have fanciful dreams, that we got too many people playing the proverbial Don Quixote and trying to fight the impossible dreams, either out on the plains of Spain or on a Broadway stage. And that's all you're saying. No. Or it could go back to the personal level of someone saying, well, wait a minute, I've got dreams, if you want to call them that, based upon my true talents and true worth, but life just won't give me a break. What would the ordinary intellect be if it could not dream about that which it could not do? But that's no great revelation. You don't have to write that down, because surely I have no doubt that some, or a handful, many pop psychology books, many ordinary people have said something like that. But it's not psychology. It is astrophysics. It is physics itself. It is the chemical, electrical energy driving the great plane, the great vast plane, the great vast chemical plane, wherein lightning forever strikes. Wherein they're continuing, if you're ordinary, to move the telescope about. to move it from the suburbs of Los Angeles into the wilds of Arizona, and then continue to move it out. It is not a matter of dreaming impossible dreams specifically in you, and it's not a matter that life keeps holding out carrots that no one can catch up with. It is at the heart of the intellect continuing to run. What would happen? This always, I understand, it can make you chuckle, it can make you look off, but now some of you can make you kind of look like, well, yeah, I'm so hip to this, yeah, I got it. But it is so telling because it can't happen in ordinary people. That is, you at the ordinary level. Here, go, yeah. What would happen if any secondary activity of man actually fulfilled its aim, its stated purpose? If astrophysics got past the edge of the dimensional universe and saw the Big Bang. In other words, what if any science, any social science, answered its question, what would happen? It's close-upville. What if we could in some way, finally, through all possible avenues, overcome, stop the anomalous criminal behavior of certain people? It would close up the prison system, for one thing. All these people out of work, out there on the streets, living in your yard. You understand? It would be the end, the success of anything. The success of psychology would be the end of psychology. The success of physics would be the end of physics. The success of the human intellect in its cosmos of being able to go into the seminal events, the Big Bang psychologically. By God, what made me what I am? The great parts? No, yeah, the few of the bad ones. But what makes me the hell of a guy I am? Jesus, if I could just figure it out. If you could just figure it out, close up the shop. It is not psychological. It flies psychologically. They speak about it, that you have got to be able to dream of that which you cannot do. But it has to do with the movement of energy. It has to do with the continuing expansion of any system. Because the energy within a system will refer back to itself, but the more it does that over a period of time, and this has no three-dimensional corollary, but I'm just going to say it, because it almost makes some spatial sense. When the energy keeps referring back to itself, the system will eventually expand. I wasn't planning to try to go into that. It just will. The system will grow, and that makes no sense. That belies the laws of three-dimensional energy, because it's inferring that energy is now creating some new energy, which I know is three-dimensionally fallacious. But I just thought I'd point out to you that it is not a dead end, even at a larger level, of the fact that within a system energy keeps referring ultimately to itself. That does not mean it's just a merry-go-round like this. It would get like this and then get like that. But how far removed is that from? Well, at one time with our telescopes we could see out to there. But now, 10 years later, we can see out to there. And now 20 years later, we can see out to there. Huh? We're not standing still. No sirree. That is true. Well, a 5-minute press on. Back to another Kyroot that so many of you have written to me in the last 45 minutes about it. The one that says, no matter how proper and available are the songs of the hormones. You remember that one? Yeah. Well, the Kyroot was, to ordinary ears, the singing of hormones. What was it? To ordinary ears, nothing equals the singing of hormones. That was about it. It's hell to have to quote yourself. I mean, somebody close to you. To ordinary ears, there is nothing like the singing of hormones. And the parenthetical end was, and thus those with city reception find the top 40 to be the only 40. Now you remember that was the one. I still didn't quote exactly, did I? But the gist was, to ordinary ears, nothing compares to the singing of harmonies. All right. Now what I was going to say was that no matter how proper, no matter how available, no matter how pleasant may seem to be the songs of harmonies, if that's the extent of your musical reception, if that's the extent of your musical, speaking symbolically, I just said that. I don't know what we could be speaking quite directly and plainly for all I know. But if that's the extent of your musical horizons, expectations, the reception that you receive is the singing of the harmonies, then the top 40, which you can look at as being old, familiar favorites in the world of info, then the top 40 will be your only 40. If you're not trying to intellectually move, and we don't have time to get in, but there is a kind of another description of what seems and feels to be a struggle within a man between two aspects of even his physiological system, between the endocrine and the nervous system. That I'm normally referring to the nervous system in general, but now we have dragged down our wonderful friends, the little harmonies. So if you're not, let's just say it quick, intellectually attempting to move up the hit parade chart, if you're not attempting to move up the chart yourself above such established artists as Grand Funk Harmones, or what's that on the, I know I'm dating this a little, but we don't know when people will see this, but those, the Rolling Testosterones. Or there's, all right, we'll get a little more up to date, the New Kids on the Estrogen. If you're not intellectually struggling to move up the chart, that is the top 40 chart, which is composed, remember the top 40 chart, this is an old Kyroot. You remember that one? The only reason some guy said the only reason they call it popular music is so people think it was popular. See, some of you laughed at that many moons ago, but instead of referring to music, take it as info, facts. That they're popular facts. They're popular thoughts, popular notions, just like popular music. But it sure is easier to get a chuckle, a smart-ass sneer from people to say, no reason, especially those that are not all that enamored of what they're playing on the radio, to say, the only reason that they call it popular music is just so you'll think it's popular. And people go, ha ha. But you notice no one walks out if you said that, and you could read minds, you sat to an audience and they left, and they go, Jesus Christ, you could apply that to ordinary thinking. Don't hold your drawers, your breath. But if you are not struggling intellectually to move up the chart, that is the top 40 chart, that is the listing of everything driven by hormones, all the songs, no matter, remember now, we're not attacking that hit parade. Not unless you're anti-eating, anti-sex, anti-defecating. After you did eat, we'll assume. No sane person is anti-hormone. No one is against the hit parade of the hormone chart. But if you're not intellectually trying to get a bullet, to move up, to get hot, if you can't pull above Grand Funk Harmones, if you can't get above them inside your own hit parade, you are stuck forever down in the lower echelons. You are stuck forever in the area to where you're only 40. That is, your only info is the top 40. That is, you'll never know anything other than everybody else knows. Are we completely out? Bye. Wait a minute. Bye. See you next time, unless some of us are fortunate enough to